Well, good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, depending upon where you are in the world, and welcome to today's Security Boulevard webinar. I am Charlene O'Hanlon, and I am the moderator for today's event. We have a great webinar on tap today. It's so much fun. But before we get started, we do have a few housekeeping items we need to go over. First of all, today's event is being recorded. So if you miss any or all of the event, or if you just want to watch it again, you'll have the opportunity to do so. Following today's webinar, we will be sending out an email that contains a link to access the webinar on demand. And we are taking questions from the audience. So if at any time during today's presentation you have a question for our speaker, please don't wait, don't hesitate, just use your GoToWebinar control panel and submit your questions, and we will try to get to as many as we can near the end of today's webinar. Also, at the end of today's webinar, we are going to be doing a drawing for 4 $25 Amazon gift cards. So please stick around. Hopefully you'll be one of our 4 lucky winners. All right, with that, let's go ahead and kick off today's webinar, which is 3 things to get right for successful DevSecOps. Our speaker today is Scott Ford, who is Principal Architect at Lacework. Scott, thanks so much for joining me today. Really appreciate it.
Charlene, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. And thanks very much for Security Boulevard for having us out. I'm really excited to get through this talk and look forward to any questions that everybody has. Please don't be shy about that. These are always the best part of when we do these types of webinars, is to make it interactive. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. As Charlene mentioned, my name is Scott Ford, and I'm Principal Architect at a company called Lacework out of the San Francisco Bay Area. And I've spent pretty much the large majority of my career in technology working on large-scale automation projects. I'm a longtime systems administrator. I've spent 6 years prior to joining Lacework traveling around the world working with companies that were looking to digitally transform. So a lot of the focus was on automation. A lot of the focus is on the software development lifecycle, what it takes to actually build out and automate large environments at scale. But then also a huge part of it, which I know we'll touch a lot on in this talk today, was around culture and collaboration, of how teams work together to actually achieve that the goals that they've set out for. And the goals that we're talking about is really around shipping digital products, right? Building out digital projects, bringing digital products to market as fast, as efficiently as possible, but of course as securely as possible too. And really, when we're talking about building out digital products, there's no other place you want to be building but in the cloud. That's where the large majority of our customers build. That's where Lacework as a company, we operate completely in the cloud. And the cloud's just absolutely phenomenal. This is not an introduction that I'm sure everybody's well aware of it. It's incredible with your ability to build out products, digital products, and bring them to market as quickly as possible, efficiently. It scales. Rapid iterations and innovation happen within the cloud. But of course, the cloud is super, super complex. AWS is up to 175 different services and products in there, and different APIs interacting. And we talk about complexity. It's complex from team to team. I mean, I don't know a single customer of ours that has a single AWS account, or a single GCP organization, or a single Azure tenant. They have many, and underneath that are many different environments, and each one could be different, operated by different business units, for different teams, different product lines. They're all changing continuously. The scaling out both vertically, horizontally, all of that change. And with that too comes the challenge of, like, how do you possibly secure all of that? Especially when, as I said, I mean, I've been doing systems administration and cloud automation for a really long time. And the way that we really focused on securing in the past was a lot around rules-based systems, right? Describing the things that can talk to each other. This application can talk to another application on this port using these IP addresses, right? This protocol. But when it comes to cloud scale and environments that are, Kubernetes, or say we're using the APIs of services inside of the clouds that we're building on top of, that really starts to fall over. And And so it becomes really hard to detect the change that's subtle, these subtle changes that are benign versus the ones that could be malicious and all that noise. And the other challenge with all this too that we see is like, and I'm guessing many of you see as well, is that expertise in cloud security is hard to come by. The IT security people are in high demand, but also there is just the challenge of how do you scale an operation to keep up with, doing the research around the things that you should care about, and then writing all the rules to then surface up what you should be prioritizing to keep your environment secure. And that's really what the foundation of what Lacework is. We are a SaaS security platform that is really built as a massively scalable, elastic data platform. And we ingest data from our customers' environments. And the data that I'm talking about is not like the proprietary data. It's data around network metadata that's coming in from the applications. What applications are talking to each other? So source IPs, des IPs, source port, des port, protocol, etc. Cloud resource configuration. We ingest API communication from things like CloudTrail or GCP audit logs or Azure activity logs. And we do this continuously. So once we're deployed out into a customer's environment, we're continuously ingesting all of this data, and we organize that data into behaviors. The behaviors being that how a given environment behaves, what is talking to what, hour over hour, week over week, month over month. Out of the box, every single one of our customer gets 90 days of retention, but you can expand that up to 180 days and be able to, I think the best analogy is really have like a black box on an airplane for your environments to understand everything that's talking to everything else. But once we have this baseline understanding, and again, this is, sorry, let me back up for just a second. This is done without our customers needing to write any kind of rules. They don't have to say this is what to look for inside of an environment. Lacework does all that underneath the hood. So so back to that challenge of having multiple environments. So the way that your development environment behaves versus your staging environment versus your production environment, the way one account behaves versus another account, all of that is understood by Lacework. And we build out this baseline, and from there have an understanding of the behaviors of a given environment. And once we have the behaviors, we can start to raise up events that we see, anomalies in the environment. And all those events are then ranked and scored according to their criticality, right? So known indicators of compromise, known bad IP addresses, file hashes, known bad DNS inside the environment, users being created in a region that we've never seen users be created in before, might be an event that gets raised up. And so on average, our customers are seeing between 1 to 2 high or critical alerts per day. This is large, massive scale deployments, which is really, really important if we get back to the challenges of smaller teams trying to deal with larger and larger environments. How do you prioritize and understand what's the information we need to act on? And so we really focus on providing that high fidelity information. Now, all this data that we collect in from our customers' environments, we funnel that into 4 key areas across the platform, which is cloud API and user activity. So again, that's like the CloudTrail, audit logs, activity logs, understanding the way that services are being used inside of the environment and being able to raise up those anomalies that we see off the baseline. Configuration compliance. So this is once integrated with Lacework, we run continuous configuration assessments across all of your cloud resources to know if they are if there's security vulnerabilities and how they're configured. So out of the box, there's continuous PCI, SOC 2, ISO, NIST, and HIPAA, and with more coming as well. So continuous configuration assessments across your public cloud environments. We also do vulnerability discover, so for both host and container vulnerabilities, both at build time. So we build out integrations with the CI tooling. That's what my team really focuses on as well. And we also do host and vulnerability. We all the data that we gather around the vulnerabilities in your hosts in containers, we also map that to everything that's running. So high fidelity information around vulnerabilities that are actually active inside your environment. And then the fourth pillar in this is around runtime security. So whether you're deployed in Kubernetes or containers, or you have hosts deployed out there, understanding everything that's generating network traffic inside your environment and what those behaviors are, what's talking to what. So inside of an environment, if you have Python running, we know the difference between a group of Python apps that are doing the same thing versus another set of Python apps that are doing something else, right? Being able to map all that out and being able to compare it. So once deployed out, we diff every single hour, and we can say, compare this hour to every other hour you've been deployed, and what are the behaviors in that, and raise up those anomalies. Now, all of this, these pillars, they really span across the teams inside the environment, which is super, super important, right? So when we talk about shipping digital products, it takes a cross-functional teams to really bring these products to market, but also to keep them secure. So so we spend a lot of time talking to our customers. All of them are focused on what you would call DevOps or DevSecOps, building out cultures of collaboration inside of their environments to keep their product shipping. And so Lacework is an API-centric platform. My team and I, we build out tools and integrations with the platform, open source tooling that allow our customers access to all this data wherever they need it, right? Integrate into pipelines, integrate into access to the data via a command line interface, the ability to automate Lacework itself using automation tooling such as Terraform and so on. So the data inside of Lacework spans across these teams that are all responsible for bringing products to market. And right now, I don't know about all of you, but I spend a lot of time reading up on articles. So working with customers is always the most important thing. My experience in the past of getting to work with customers that are really trying to have success around DevSecOps is really key. But we also are seeing like a ton of publications out there from the State of DevOps reports that gets published every year with really insightful data around what's working inside of customers' environments. For this particular one, Lacework, we took a look at 12 things to get right for successful DevSecOps. And there's some good key takeaways that I really like in this one. Something that we talk about a lot. One of those ones is really that changing of mindset where product teams are the customer, right? It's not IT security, and IT security needs to do everything that they can to keep product teams effective in shipping their products. And we're going to touch on that today as well. But also along with this, whenever papers like the Gartner one are great because they're able to collect data from a lot of different sources and be able to raise up this type of information. And it should be no surprise, right, that we're seeing across the board companies are investing in everything around whatever it takes to get their products to market. So call it agile, call it DevOps, product lifecycle management. Across the board, we're seeing this. So it's not anymore of whether or not are you going to do this. It's just really where are you on this maturity model right now? Where are you on your journey to achieve DevOps or DevSecOps? And that's also really great in the findings. Now, the outcome of the Gartner paper is 12 things to get DevSecOps right. And we have now 45 minutes left to dive into this. And I'm sure if we turn on the mics right now, we could introduce double the amount of things that you would want to focus on to get DevSecOps right. There's so many different things to do, and everybody's environment is different. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to focus in on 3 key things that my team and I do every single day. I'm not just a preacher about this stuff, but we practice this. We ship continuously every single day. I'm a strong believer in automation and test-driven development. And so we're going to focus on some things that we do internally at Lacework to get DevSecOps right, but also things that we're seeing across the board inside of our customer base. And all of our customers, too, are shipping their own digital products, SaaS products, B2B SaaS products, and so on. So Without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump right into the first one, which is something I'm super passionate about. I've talked about this before in other talks, which is secure and apply operation discipline to automation scripts and infrastructure security posture. Now, there's lots of different automation tool out there. Before joining Lacework, I worked at Chef Software for 6 years. We use Terraform all over the place inside of Lacework. It's in use all over the place in our customer base. But these can talking about the tooling itself can quickly devolve into religious wars of like, oh, use Chef. Oh, I only use Ansible. At the end of the day, look, if it helps you bring your product to market, great. Have fun with that. But I cannot tell you the number of times that I've gone in to work with a company on whether it be Terraform or some kind of configuration management. And if they have no experience, you can teach them the basics in an afternoon. This is how you start writing configuration management. But very quickly, what we're talking about around these types of tooling is it's not done often by a single individual. It's a collaboration. Lots of people come together to build out these platforms. And so the next logical question after you start, adopting automation configuration management is, well, great, how are we going to collaborate on this? And I would always ask customers, well, where's source control? And they'd say, source what? And I'd say, yeah, like, where do you store your Terraform scripts? Oh, yeah, well, I mean, we've got a shared drive, or we've got a Bastion host that we all log into, and as you're just up there, you log in as your own account, and then you can, fire it off from this. So let me get this right. You run your automation code from a Bastion host against production. All right, now hopefully some of you are laughing about this because maybe it hits home, but the reality is that, look, we're missing out on one of the biggest things of security that we need to focus in on. Terraform at times, I mean, it literally runs our businesses. The configuration of how your storage buckets are deployed out inside of environments, the way that a Kubernetes cluster is deployed out there is all right there. So shouldn't we put security best practices right at the beginning of this? And that's absolutely right. Now, if you're not using Git, I can't and you are using those configuration management tools, please stop. Please spend a good week and just go through one of the free Git immersion trainings and start to learn Git, because it's so important, not just for the security, for a foundation of security, but in a standard way for these changes to move out. But it's also one of the key pillars in achieving a culture of DevOps is collaboration. And Git is a source control tool that was built for collaboration. I mean, Linus Torvald literally created this for the creation of the Linux kernel so that teams from around the world could collaborate together on the source control. And it's in use across the board at Lacework and every single one of our customers to some degree. But Git by itself doesn't have any real security, right? For that, you really need to start looking at the different platforms that exist out there: GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, right? These tooling allow you to configure who has access to those repos and what security configuration do we want to have in place for them. And the areas that come to mind that we always talk about here is, first of all, access control, right? The basics. Who should be able to read this repo? Who should be able to write to this particular repo, right? That's the foundation of this. You want to be able to have tight control over your automation scripts. They should be stored in source control, and you should be able to control who has access to them. With that too comes the auditing and compliance. Once you have that in place, then you can start to see, well, who made this change? Who approved this change? Who reviewed the change, right? Who merged the change? All of that starts to happen once you adopt one of these tools for your for storing your source control repositories. Now, another thing that my team does that we absolutely enforce on every single one of our repos is cryptographically signed changes, which is when you get set up, a new developer inside of our team, once they get set up, the first thing they have to do is, they get installed, but then they create their GPG keys, and every commit must be signed. That allows us to know we have proof, a record of who made this change. They are who they say they are, and when they make that change. Now, this is important for us both as we produce a lot of open source software, so we want to be able to take changes from the outside, but we also too want to make sure that anybody from the outside that wants to contribute to our open source projects, they too will have to have GPG configured and sign their changes. So these are enforcements on the repo itself. Another thing too is enforce code review for changes. You may not be the person that's writing changes. I work with incredibly brilliant Go developers. I'm not a Go developer myself, but I still review the changes. I like to go through, we have a discussion in it, all the back and forth is recorded in the conversation in the pull request that someone is submitting. You get to see all that back and forth. Well, what was done to make sure that we're doing our due diligence on every single change. And that can include this opportunity for security folks. Not every security person I work with today is a software developer. Certainly there are software developers who are focused in now on solving security for their environments. But just because you're not a software developer does not mean you don't have something to contribute in source control. You have a great opportunity to focus in, add your code reviews, and collaborate with your team members. So these are a few of the options for security inside of your source control repositories. If you're not paying attention to these, you absolutely should. The other thing that this has given birth to is this movement that is called GitOps, right? GitOps is this idea that changes inside the environment should flow through a standard left to right continuous process of developers making changes and storing those changes in source control, and then using things like CI, continuous integration, and CD to get changes deployed out, continuous delivery, continuous deployment, to get those changes deployed out. With GitOps, you have a canonical source of truth saying this is our master branch is pointed here. This is the current state of what production looks like, and from there, your changes flow out into your various environments throughout the cloud. So this is really important. Going back to the idea around configuration of your GitHub repos, as an example. So at Lacework today, my team, what we do is we use Terraform itself to configure GitHub. And that makes sure that we have a standard way that we configure all of our source control repositories. So Terraform has what are called providers for the various APIs, platforms that you want to configure with Terraform, and the GitHub provider for Terraform is really effective at that. So just this last week, I had a new team member join up from Belfast to join our team, and it was as simple as adding a new team member in, and already that new team member has access to all of the repos that my team should have access to already. And while I'm not the person that approved or merged this pull request, I was able to add this new team member in, submit a pull request to the production engineering team. They reviewed it, they merged it, and then my team member had access. So it's a collaborative way to manage access to all the repositories inside your environment. Now, as I mentioned, my team also builds out all the tools and integrations with the platform, including we've just finished the initial migration of our Terraform provider for Lacework to the HashiCorp Terraform registry. And this is so our customers, they have, Lacework is multi-tenant as well, which means you can have multiple accounts under a single organization. And each one of those accounts has different integrations with Slack channels and Jira integrations and PagerDuty teams that are responding to the events that we raise up. And all of that too can be codified using the Lacework provider for the Terraform provider for Lacework. So this is a great way. We want to make sure that you have a standard way to manage out any platform environment. This is just an example of what we're doing, and been really powerful for our customers and for our own team internally for how we manage our own Lacework environment. Now, once you're adopting this kind of standard one way to production, you start using continuous integration, continuous delivery, then it also gives you the ability to start building out test-driven development. Now, this is really, really important. Test-driven development is definitely a maturity model. It's not something you have to sit down and say, oh God, I have to write all the tests for all the things that I care about. Start off, first of all, focus on getting your source control getting your automation code in source control, but then once it's in source control, build out a pipeline for shipping those changes out, and then continuously iterate on adding more and more tests. Two of the projects that I really like right now today are Checkoff, which is by Bridge Crew, and this gives you the ability to do test-driven development for your Terraform code, for Kubernetes configuration, for CloudFormation templates, and more. I think they do Azure templates as well. The other thing on the host side is the Chef community has a great project called Inspec, which allows you to do test-driven development for your Linux, Windows, and Docker hosts as well, so you can ensure that your infrastructure is configured according to whatever standards you have to set internally in your environment. So a couple of really cool ones to check out. Looks like the formatting on this one slide for Checkoff is wrong, but it's checkoff.io. Check out those. Really, really cool. We're seeing them inside the environment. Something to take advantage of. So in securing operation discipline to automation scripts and infrastructure security posture, look, this is software development. Automation code, Terraform code, Bash scripts, PowerShell scripts, whatever it is, it should be treated the same as any other software development inside your environment. It should be stored in source control, no exceptions, right? You should have a standard way for the way that those changes move out inside your environment. Once you move those changes into source control, take advantage of those security best practices. Configure your repositories the way that allow for the collaboration, get more people involved in reviewing and understanding how changes flow out there, but start to build on that with things like test-driven development. There's so much that's happening out there around test-driven development and automation, and it's absolutely fundamental today. So, all right. So the next thing I want to focus in on is a topic which is quit trying to eliminate all vulnerabilities during development. So vulnerability assessments. Vulnerability assessments are, in a lot of ways, it's fast becoming a commodity. These are literally checkboxes in a lot of the services that exist out there today. GitHub has some really amazing stuff that you can just turn on inside your environment. You can turn on Dependabot and start getting assessments about vulnerabilities that are found inside of your artifacts that you're building out. Elastic Container Registry, Azure Container Registry, Google Container Registry, they all have vulnerability assessments, and it's really important. You should be taking advantage of it one way or another. Now, this vulnerability assessments, of course, is not just for containers, but for hosts, and then also what we talked a little bit before about configuration too. You always want to be assessing your environment for vulnerabilities. The challenge with all this, and what we've seen from our customers, is that when you start to integrate some of your container registries, we have customers that have 50,000 container images inside of their registry, and you can immediately get to that point right away about alert fatigue, right? Getting notifications for 50,000 images, and you've got a team of maybe 3 people that are supposed to go through and assess and remediate all those vulnerabilities. Where do you even begin? Well, you might want to turn and start to look at one of your environments. And, I hear this from security folks all the time. This is an example. This is actually, this is a small Kubernetes environment that's seen through what Lacework's patented technology called the polygraph. The polygraph is a 1-hour snapshot of everything that communicated with everything else inside of a given environment. And you look at this and you're like, well, where are these services running? What are they talking to? How do, maybe that's a good place to start where I can prioritize. And some of this is going to really revolve around, like, we really want to understand what's the risk to the business, right? Just because you have a vulnerability doesn't mean that you're actually vulnerable. So what this particular image is showing is going inside the Lacework platform, inside of the polygraph, and searching for external, seeing everything inside the environment within the last hour that actually took external traffic. Because if you're going to focus in your time on vulnerabilities, rather than going through and making the laundry list of all the vulnerabilities you need to remediate, start with understanding where do these services run, what's taking external traffic out there, what are the critical services that we need to make sure are secure. And from that point, you can start through the path of actual remediation. Now, the other thing too is for the teams that we're working with are they need access to this data inside of Lacework. That previous screen of looking at the polygraph, nobody's spending their time really staring at the polygraph to try to understand their environments. It's being able to sift through all that data and make sense of what's going on. We build out the Lacework command line interface for our data platform. It runs on Windows, Linux, Mac, really anywhere you need. And the goal behind this project is really giving our customers fast, accurate, actionable insights into the data inside of the Lacework platform. So this particular query that we're looking at is, Lacework, show me all of my hosts. I want to see all of the CVEs that are inside of the environment right now that are actually active and fixable. And when I say active, Lacework's insight is we're not just showing you that you've got a particular vulnerability, but actually that vulnerability, the package that has the vulnerability is active on the host, and the status of that vulnerability is active. We have a lot of customers that are very focused on the ability to immutability in their inside their environment, the ability to swap out hosts, blue-green deployments, right? So machines may not be online, but for an hour. In some cases, in the case of containers, it might just be minutes that they're up online. They're rotating in and out. So being able to say, zero in what's actually active inside the environment, what are the things that we want to focus in on? So fast, accurate, and actionable insights to be able to focus in on data. When it comes to this, again, vulnerability doesn't necessarily mean vulnerable. You really have to sit down and understand what's going on in your environment, where your services are running, and the larger questions of what is the risk to the business if this particular vulnerability was exploited, right? And from there, you can start to build out and prioritize the things that matter inside the environment. The understanding where your services are running, what's running at the edge, what's taking external traffic, those are also key. And then also prioritizing those critical vulnerabilities that are actually active inside the environment and fixable, right? So there's real fixes that have been released. So the next thing I want to talk about is adapting security tools and the process to developers, not the other way around. This is that key takeaway that I really zeroed in on the report, the Gartner report, which is key, right? For so long, security organizations have really operated in their silos, right? There was oftentimes organizations had the security review before a product would go live, right? This was a one-stop thing where the security team would come in and do their full assessment before the go live, right? But today, that just doesn't cut it, right? We're talking about pushing changes many times a day. It's got to be automated, it's got to be continuous, and it's got to be collaborative, right? So this is, along with this movement to DevSecOps, you're hearing more and more about this as security as an enabler, not a blocker, right? We've got to find ways as security teams to measure ourselves on our ability to keep our product teams shipping and bringing their products to market as fast as possible. One way to do this is to really stop and assess the landscape. Think about the tools that your developers are using today to keep those products shipping, and meet the developers where they are. And what I mean by that is, like, you know, Lacework as a platform is we collect all this data that's really relevant for teams to be able to inject into the SDLC, to automate, to ask questions of the across their environment. But would be an absolute killer for many of our customers is if the product team came in and said, hey, we've just bought this brand new tool called Lacework, and all you need to do is that, you know, that automated process you have built out inside to ship the product. Once you get to this step right here, you have to go log into another UI and you can collect the data from that environment. It doesn't fly, right? So we need to think about our developers first, about our product teams first, and think about ways that we can bring the data that's relevant to them around security to help keep them shipping as fast as possible. This is an example. This is actually our team's Go SDK. So we build an open source Go SDK for the Lacework platform, and we do what is effectively known as dog fooding. So we use Lacework to test every single build. Every night we run our nightly builds, we do our integration tests with the platforms, with the APIs, and we build artifacts. The Lacework command line interface is shipped as a binary, as I said, for Windows, Linux, Mac. We also ship Docker containers for integration with CI pipelines for our customers. And so rather than having our team have to log in and do checkups on whether or not we have new vulnerabilities with part of our build process, we built out, working with one of our customers, the ability to generate out our vulnerability assessments as HTML. So with every single build, we run a vulnerability assessment and we create an artifact that's just inside of our Circle CI pipeline to be able to assess these vulnerabilities. Now, we also, you know, it's important too that in this is to get the notifications to the right place. Every single CI tool out there has the ability to integrate with different, you know, whether it be email systems or chat ops, if you will. We use Slack internally, so if a build fails, if we find new vulnerabilities inside the environment, we get the notification right in our team's notification channel, and then we can dive in and address those right away. So this is an example of things that we're doing ourselves to really keep our product shipping inside of our environment, keep those integrations flowing. So when it comes to adapting your security tools to developers, really look to ways to break down those silos. You've got to start collaborating as much as possible. You want to think about measuring yourselves not just on the security posture inside the environment, but also in your ability to keep those products shipping as fast as possible, right? Learn the tools of the product teams, and this really comes by crossing the aisle, if you will. Unfortunately, we're not doing too much of that in person right now, but really you got to find ways to cross the aisle and get in with the product teams, understand how they use these tools day to day, how they measure themselves, and find ways to integrate. The key in any of this digital transformation around DevSecOps, DevOps is really collaboration. It's the foundation. It's the hardest thing to do, but you got to focus in on it. To summarize all of this, really, though, we live in a world, if you're building out products in the cloud, that is the priority. It's the #1 priority inside of the environment. You think about launching out a new company. You don't start off by making the plan to make a product secure. You plan around the product and the features and the capabilities that solve business problems for your customers. That is always going to be the #1 priority out here. And even in, you know, these crazy times where we're hearing new reports about, you know, top security companies being hacked, it's serious stuff. But the priority is still on the product. And the more that we as security teams can get in and see ourselves as part of that product process, the better we're going to be able to collaborate, understand the stories that the problems that our product teams are dealing with, and how we can help keep them shipping and keep them shipping securely. So to summarize again, we covered around the key elements kind of from left to right. Implement strong version control on all code and components, right? If you're not doing source control today, you really got to spend some time focusing in on that, but also look at those ways that you can configure your source control repositories on whatever platform you're using, GitHub, GitLab, to enforce those best practices, enforce code review and collaboration. Look for ways that you can build in test-driven development throughout that process. When it comes to doing the vulnerabilities inside your environment, it's easy to get overwhelmed by the number of vulnerabilities that we surface up. But what's really, really important is understand those services, understand where they're running, and being able to prioritize around that. Prioritize around what's actually active inside the environment. Prioritize around which vulnerabilities have fixes for them. And that's really going to key to help you move things forward. And again, if you're in security and you're looking to be successful in DevSecOps, you've got to start developing a product mindset and figure out ways to meet your developers where they are rather than trying to make them come to you. So with that, I want to open this up to questions. I'm really look forward to any kind of conversation that we can get going. So let's see, do we have any questions in?
Yes, we have some questions. And before we dive into those, though, I do want to remind the audience there's plenty of time. If you do have a question, please go ahead and use your GoToWebinar control panel and submit it. And we'll just dive right into what we have right now. Okay, here's an interesting one. Scott, in the context of this week's revelations about the infiltration of SolarWinds, what would you say to a client who is nervous about using such intrusive cloud-based network monitoring tools?
Well, that's a good question. So I do want to call out in the word intrusive is I'm not sure that that's the right thing necessarily for Lacework. So when we talk about what we do inside the environment, so Lacework does have an integration with the cloud environments where we're pulling in configuration for how you're deployed out in your environment. We also have an agent that does deploy out, but we do not do any kind of deep packet inspection for any of the payloads out there. So we're just mainly looking at the 5-tuple, what the source IP, dest IP, source port, dest port, source, the protocol. We look at DNS, what it's talking to, and stitching that all together. So in any time that you're deploying out an agent inside your environment, you really do have to do the due diligence. This is, SolarWinds and FireEye. They're incredible companies, right? And if they can get hacked out there, this is definitely something that can come up for anybody. So understanding those binaries that you're deploying out inside your environment, making sure that they're signed by the developer, by the company that's building them out, and is really key. So I don't want to sugarcoat that at all. I don't want to sit here and tell you that that what happened to these other companies is something that couldn't happen to anyone else. It's really, really important. But it doesn't mean, though, that what we do is we don't deploy out anything, right? We can't fly blind here. We have to have an understanding of what's going on inside of our environments. So one way or another, you're going to have to collect that information, and you're going to have to sift through it, and you're going to have to understand what's important and what's actionable.
All right, great. All right, next question here. Let's see. Okay. All right. From your experience, what is the biggest challenge to shifting to a DevSecOps culture?
Well, I'm glad that that question zeroed in on the word culture, because that is the key, because it is definitely, that's the hardest part. The tooling, you know, as I mentioned on a previous slide, the tooling around DevOps and DevSecOps, you can learn the basics of, you know, pretty quickly. It's the point around collaboration that things start to fall over. It's the human element of this all. In my experience, the most successful DevSecOps, DevOps transformations that I've seen happen from the ground up, but also from the top down. It is important that you have a leader that's sponsoring whatever the effort is internally, that it can be a remover of obstacles. I'm going to cite, I'm not going to call out the company's name, but a really big iconic company that I worked with, we did a digital transformation with them, and you know, they were inside of their own environment, years and years of doing IT. They had their ways, they were set in stone. And so what we did is we took the team that was really focusing on the effort, and we moved them off site into a hotel conference room with us, and we built everything that we were going to do inside the cloud to show this is what good can look like. Right. And after a week, we had built out an incredible prototype of automation and test-driven development and collaboration inside of source control, teams working cross-functional. But then we had the enviable task of taking everything that we'd learned. Like, you know, everybody ended that week with like, this is it. I don't ever want to do anything else another way. This is amazing. And we took all that we took all that experience, and we went back to their environment one more time, and you get immediately right back into, yeah, but you know, for that you have to go talk to this other team, and they're in another room and they don't do things that way. It is at that point that you need to have a strong leader that comes in and goes, actually, no, I'm in charge of this thing, and I'm going to remove that obstacle for you right now because this is too important for the business. So when I think about this, it's collaboration, it is absolutely key, working together in cross-functional teams and having that right sponsorship, that the company is absolutely willing to put some muscle behind the effort to push things through when they get stuck.
All right, great. Let's see. Quick reminder, guys, there's plenty of time for questions. So if you do have one, go ahead and use your GoToWebinar control panel. Next question here, how quickly does it take to set up Lacework?
That's a great question. So set up, I'm glad that that was also called out, because setup is not exactly the right word. So once again, Lacework is a SaaS platform. And so the beauty of this is you're not running any kind of infrastructure internally inside of your environment. Now, we do integrate with the cloud providers, and what we see today, we put a ton of effort around our automation deployment for our customers. So one of the ways my team and I really focus on is all the Terraform. So we built out Terraform modules for integrating our customers' AWS, GCP, and Azure environments, and we can safely get a customer deployed out in roughly 10 minutes. And once deployed out, one of the exciting things that you know, once a customer is connected up, when we're going through a trial process with a customer, it's, you know, you go through that deployment process, go about 10 minutes, get it connected up into the environment, and then we say to the customer, okay, you're all deployed, we'll see you in a few days. We'll come back and we'll check out all the findings, what Lacework has discovered. And they're like, that's it? Like, don't have to write any rules about this? Nope, nothing. So our deployment kickoffs are about an hour, but to actually get it deployed into environments can be as short as 10 minutes, depending on the number of accounts that we're integrating into Lacework. So really exciting stuff.
Yeah, excellent. All right, that is all the questions that we've gotten in so far. I will leave the question and answer period open for a couple minutes and see if we do get any more questions coming in. And while we're waiting to see if we do get any more, just a quick reminder to the audience that today's event has been recorded. So if you missed any or all of it, or if you just want to watch it again, you will have the opportunity to do so. we will be sending out an email following today's webinar that contains a link to access the webinar on demand. And the webinar is also going to be living on the Security Boulevard website, so you can always go look for it there. Just go to securityboulevard.com/webinars, look in the on demand section, and it should be right there waiting for you. Okay, still no more questions coming in, so I guess I'll go ahead and close out the question and answer period. I do want to thank those who did submit questions, some really good ones there, so appreciate it. Let's see, what else do I need to tell you? Oh, we have an Amazon gift card drawing. That's what I forgot. Let's go ahead and do that before we close out today's webinar. Our first winner, there's a $25 Amazon gift card. So first winner today is Marcel R. Congratulations, Marcel. Our second winner today is Peter M. Congratulations, Peter. Third winner today is Andrew S. Congratulations, Andrew. And our fourth and final winner today is Shireen G. Congratulations, Shireen. We'll be following up with all four of you via email to get your Amazon gift card over to you. So please check your inbox. If you don't see anything there, please check your spam folder. Scott, what a great presentation. Thank you so much. Lots of great information in that. You know, judging from the questions that came in, it was definitely food for thought for them. So really appreciate your time and your expertise.
Yeah, thanks so much, Charlene. Really appreciate it. And we're really excited. We're have a lot that we're shipping in the coming months. So if you're interested in learning more about Lacework, please come over and find us at lacework.com. And come and find me on LinkedIn as well. I'd love to collaborate and love to hear what you're doing. If you've got patterns inside your environment that you want to share back to, I'd love to hear that as well. So thanks so much.
Awesome. Awesome. We also want to thank the audience for joining me today. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I am signing off. Have a great day, everybody, and please stay safe.